Hello and welcome to another episode of Tools of the Trade. My name is John Miller. I'm the Executive Director here at the Shippensburg History Center. In today's topic, we're going to talk a little bit about artistry. Artistry, if you think about it, could be anybody who has special skills that work in the field of, say, documentaries. Maybe they build museum exhibits, so they have strong skills as far as carpentry. Maybe they're artists. Maybe they're seamstresses, maybe they're historians, maybe they're good researchers, whatever, whatnot. All those specialized fields go right into the art area of public history. And what do I mean by that? So, a couple years ago, I had a couple local artists out of my community contact me. They wanted to do a Civil War painting of one of the battles along the retreat from Gettysburg. So I produced photographs of what Civil War soldiers look like as far as if there was anything that they needed to know. So in this case, cavalry. So I went ahead and I found several period images of soldiers on horseback. That way the artist can see what types of gear these men had, how they sat in the saddle, down to what types of ordnance are they using to uniforms themselves. And then what I did after that was I supplied them with photographs of some of my uniforms as well as additional gear that would have been used in that particular period. So for the Civil War, for an example, if you're a Confederate soldier, what was issued to you in 1861 is not going to be appropriate for what's being issued in 1863. Same way with 1862 as far as uniforms are concerned. And that's because you have the period of the commutation system to the Bureau of Clothing, which would be, in this case, the Richmond Depot. And then there were several transitions to those uniforms as the years of the Civil War went. So after I took photographs of all that, gave them to the artist, at that point, it's up to the artist to take the recommendations as a consultant to them to apply to their artwork. I've also served as a historical advisor on set for a couple documentaries, as well as an actor and a talking head. And those there, you have to be really research oriented and you have to have good public speaking skills. And from there, you just hope that the final product, when you're on camera and you see the final product, hopefully you don't make fun of yourself. One of the things that we used to do when I worked in the Maryland Park Service was we used to do a lot of specialized events. And these were where we recreated certain soldiers from certain brigades. For an example, we did an event at Turner's Gap, and we were looking at Colquitt's brigade, and his brigade was made up of Georgians as well as Alabamians. Nobody makes a Georgia jacket. So what we did was we looked through as many resources as we could, or that we could find that had photographs of what Georgia jackets would have looked like on those Georgia troops. Would they be in existence still in 1862? And then from there, we went ahead and started ordering patterns basically of a Richmond Depot pattern from Charlie Childs, and we started constructing, cutting out the pattern, tracing it out, cutting the fabric, and then after that stitching everything together to create a jacket that would have been very similarly worn to those soldiers that took part in that battle. And of course, as we're doing this and constructing these uniforms, we're using techniques that they would have used back then, number one. Number two, the best thing about that is that we actually created a lot of museum quality uniforms as we went and our skills got better. And it's amazing what you can do with just this. None of us had sewing skills, but for some reason we all made it work. And we would spend hours in the shop just creating and constructing uniforms. So as a seamstress in the art world, those services are needed because of the fact that if you're a good seamstress and you can build stuff like this, imagine what you can do in the history field as far as museums. You can go into conservation work. You can actually repair original items. That way they could be displayed, or maybe that conservation work is needed in order to save those items for future use. So there's all kinds of different skills. If maybe you're in performing arts and you're doing a documentary, or maybe perhaps you're doing a play, there's a lot of props to that. So somebody who has the knowledge of what buildings looked like back then, as far as what the interior of that building looked like, carpentry is very essential to that, because you need to recreate those spaces and recreate things the way that they looked maybe 150, 160, or even 300 years ago. Photography is another one. I've worked with several photographers who basically what they wanted to do was take a landscape, and then after that they wanted to apply that to a canvas. Well, they would go ahead and hire me out. I would take several photographs and say, okay, these clumps of trees would have been here. However, this forested area was actually all fields. So those artists would take those recommendations in order to create their final product. One of the best things about the art world is that you can recreate things that may not exist today. So for an example, I have a jacket here. A lot of people say that this is a Confederate jacket, but it is not. This is a jacket that is a recreation of a jacket that would have been worn by a Civil War soldier from the state of New York, primarily who served with the New York State National Guard in 1863. They don't mass produce these. In fact, they don't even make these. So for me to do interpretation on that, whether it be for living history or maybe I want to use this as an exhibit, I have to go back and do the research. Who were these guys? What were they being issued? Are there any surviving examples of what they're being issued? If they are, where are they, so we can get photographs of that particular piece up close? So for me, unfortunately, these don't exist. But there are several photographs showing all kinds of soldiers wearing these uniforms. So the first thing I did was I looked at some high resolution photographs, and I determined that what these guys were wearing is a 4-piece body. And you can see it here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2-piece sleeve. So 1, 2. They got a lot of black trim on their jackets. So after I did all the research and looked into that, I determined that the style of jacket that they're wearing closely fits the pattern that I have from Richmond Depot. So what I did is I altered that pattern in order to create this jacket right here. And by the time it was done, I went back, created the trousers, and luckily for me, I didn't have to make the hat. I found the hat sitting in one of the stores up in Gettysburg, and it was a museum quality piece, so I went ahead and picked it up. So now I can interpret these guys as far as what they did here in Shippensburg, what they did in Chambersburg, what they may have done in Carlisle, Harrisburg, Mount Holly Springs, Pine Grove Furnace. These soldiers marched through Mont Alto, Waynesboro. They marched into Maryland, through Smithsburg, Cavetown, until they eventually arrived in Boonesboro. And all this was during the Pennsylvania campaign while the Battle of Gettysburg was being fought, or in the wake of the Battle of Gettysburg. So if you have any special skills and you want to get into the history field, or maybe you're in the history field and maybe you have a passion for doing something else, maybe you love working with metal, for an example, there's all kinds of job opportunities out there for you in the artistry world. And the nice thing about that is maybe one day you'll be on set of a TV show or a documentary or even a movie. So until next time, thank you and we'll see you later.